February 18th, 2015, and Greece might be out of the Eurozone. Greece might be going back to their own currency. They're currently in negotiations with the EU. Why does this matter? Well, we just got out of the financial crisis several years ago. This could shake up the markets. It could ultimately lead to the breakup of the entire European Union, the Euro currency zone. So they're currently in negotiations. Greece could go back to their own currency. It could be good for us because we could go to Greece and holidays would be cheaper or their exports would be cheaper. But their economy, which really sucks right now. I even have a friend from there who is working outside of Greece, and multiple people have told me if you go to Greece, you just walk around, you see the misery, you see the poverty. And Greece has historically mismanaged their economy. They've defaulted on their loans multiple times. We even had our great Goldman Sachs, great American bank, great financial institution projecting American power that helped facilitate all these risky loans for Greece and helped, get them to go bankrupt, essentially. And
Goldman Sachs, always saving the day.
Yep. And where's this headed? Where's this headed?
What's going to happen now? Because with a new party, they're saying they're, not going to pay back their fucking debts or whatever?
Pretty
much?
That's kind of what they're...
what's going on.
Well, they're basic. It's kind of an odd situation because they're saying we don't want to accept your conditions to the European Union, but then the European Union, particularly Germany, is saying, okay, well, in that case, you just don't have to take a deal, which means you're screwed because your credit is so bad. You need us to buy your debt. So by all means, don't take it. Don't take our help. You don't have to take our conditions if you're not taking our money. But then that means Greece has no way of paying off their own debts. So, I think it's coming down to the point. It's coming down to finally something that would make more sense. Because, you look at it, when the United States faced the financial crisis, we basically did some crazy things. We did. We bailed out the banking system. We increased the money supply dramatically. You had Ben Bernanke saying he's going to come in with a helicopter just shooting money at everybody out of a hose. And we totally went berserk in the United States. But the result was we took care of the problem. We met a huge crisis with all kinds of reaction, all kinds of actions, all kinds of stimulus. And in Europe, they didn't do any of that. In Europe, where you could have said we can go to the right side of the road, we can go to the left side of the road, we can break up the Eurozone, or we can strengthen it dramatically, they didn't do that. They did nothing radical. They did nothing crazy that the crazy moment called for. And so they've been lingering for years now, and now they're finally getting to the moment where they should do something crazy, which at this point is really that Europe either needs to agree that they're going to pay down Greece's debt and essentially give them a full just bailout and not just loans, but actually just paying a lot of it off, or it's time that they just break up. Because this whole lingering thing they've been doing is not working. Greece has essentially been in this long Great Depression. Unemployment is at 25% or more. Unemployment for young people is at around half. And that's just not sustainable. You can't expect people to keep going through this.
So what's going to happen, though? Because I don't see, I pretty much... What's the worst case scenario for Greece? Because that's probably what's going to happen, right? If they pay... if they just drop whatever Greece owes, that's going to set a precedent. They're not going to want to do that.
I would say the worst case scenario would be that they have to stay and they continue to go through the austerity and then eventually default anyway. What's triggered this is a radical left-wing party called Syriza, which was a conglomerate of a bunch of leftist trade unions and groups like that, socialists and so on, has finally taken power. They've grown every year pretty much in every election because of the fact that the more mainstream right and center-left governments have been pushing the austerity and the agreements with Europe. The problem is that, I've always been a proponent of Greece defaulting and then restarting. Argentina's done that multiple times, and their economy's not great, but it hasn't been as bad as Greece. And it's like Joey mentioned, it is basically a Great Depression. That's part of the problem too. Is now Greece is in an even worse position because back in 2011 and times like that, there was contagion risk because you had a bunch of European economies, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and others, that were also in the same boat. Now it's like Greece is having a Great Depression like this, and the rest of Europe is slowly recovering, or at least most of it is. So they're in not so much of a position of power. That part of the risk for the other major European powers like Germany is that they don't want to cut a deal with Greece because that's going to cause Spain, Portugal, Ireland, and others that also have made agreements in terms of debt and austerity to want to renege on those as well. And again, contagion risk in that way. But what really needs to happen is Greece needs to default and just say, we're not going to pay our debts, we can't afford to, and start over with, go back to the drachma. And the other thing in terms of Europe is something called a Eurobond. Now, right now, Europe has a single currency, the euro, which means all these European nations use the same currency universally.
But no Eurobond.
Yeah, but the actual debt and the government debt that they do through the bond markets, just like our country does and all the other ones, is done on an individual basis. So, if you're an investor, you see, for example, the debt of Germany is relatively safe because they're more than likely to pay. But Greece, the yield's 11, 12% because they're not likely to pay if you invest in Greek bonds and you're an investor. So the problem is that your currency is tied to multiple countries, but their bonds are individual. If you go to a euro bond, you're basically, you're using the same idea as a euro. You're leveraging all of your nation's power, influence, reputation, and abilities. And you're saying, okay, you're investing in debt in the Eurozone, whether it be in Greece and Netherlands and England or wherever it may be. Well, England's not investing in Eurozone.
But what I think is actually an even bigger problem than the debt, I think, is if you look at how money flows and how people buy things.
That's right.
In Europe, in the sense that you're either buying things locally in Europe, you're buying something within your own country, or you're buying something from somewhere else in the world. The extent to which the economy is integrated is not very high.
That's right.
In the United States, when you include our federal taxation system, along with purchases that are made from someone in one state and someone in another state, more than half of our economy is national purchases of someone in one place doing it, like from someone in California buying something from someone in New York.
We do have a strong insular domestic economy in that way. I mean,
so it's all very well connected, which means if one part of the country is weak, if Florida gets hit really hard in a financial crisis, for instance, which did happen in the most recent one, the one in 2008, 2009, then Florida is able to recover relatively fast because there's so much money flooding in from the rest of the country, because as long as parts of the rest of the country are doing well.
But I don't think you can approach Europe or Greece as the United States, because no country is the United States.
I don't think it's that.
GDP.
I just think that they don't have a national economy. The way that their taxes work there, their taxes are based on each country, not on the European Union at large.
That's right.
The way that they still purchase things there is largely still within their own country. Germans are buying German stuff. French people are buying French stuff. Yeah. I'm not trying to, diss the extent to which, they sometimes buy each other's products, but it's just not to the same extent as the U.S. And even bigger than that, I really think the biggest issue here is just that when it comes to their taxes and spending, they do it nation by nation rather than doing it with the Eurozone as a whole. And as long as that's the case, as Paul Krugman pointed out and predicted before the European Union even started the euro currency, as long as this happens, you're not going to see the euro be a successful currency, and you're generally not going to see the Eurozone as a successful economy.
And I think it's important to keep in mind how Greece got into this situation, which is where they went on an orgy of spending. The government spending primarily building things like a new airport. They had the 2004 Olympic Games and Summer Olympic Games, where most of the facilities are now decrepit and rotting away, basically. And those type of things. I mean, a nation does have to tighten its belt. The problem is as we normally see, it's the poor and the middle class that were hurt, and it's the wealthy that didn't really feel as much. So, I mean, the problem is that I have with Syriza is that I feel like they promise more than they could get, because when forced to make actual economic decisions, they're not going to be able to be as radical and as aggressive. And that's what we're seeing now, is that they're stuck between the people that voted for them that are angry and they want total bailout, and then there's people that economists people that are warning them. And I think the problem is that they've now gotten in bed with Putin in Russia, and also another party in Greece called the Independent Greece, which is their minority partner in the coalition. to put that in American terms, that would be like if if let's say Dennis Kucinich and Pat Buchanan joined an alliance. That the independent Greeks are economically populist, but they have racial and immigration views that are
a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah, they're not the Nazis, but they're controversial. Yeah, but the thing is, the Nazis are waiting, and I think we have to be very careful of something that happened in Weimar Germany, which is where you had traditional governments for a while, and then of course Hitler took power and the Nazis because they were promising to get Germany out of this economic malaise that it was in with hyperinflation and everything and high unemployment. And I think the problem is with Greece is that if Syriza fails, the only anti-austerity party left is the actual Nazi, fascist black shirt.
But isn't that what always happens after the leftist idealism fails in practical terms, and everyone turns to the right wing, and then
and that's the real risk here is that if Syriza fails, I've predicted for at least 3 or 4 years that the Nazis would eventually have some sort of a majority government in Greece for at least 2 years. And I still think that it's...
You said the Nazis?
Yeah,
or neo-Nazis,
Golden
fascists.
Dawn is the name.
Yeah.
They're an organization that is they behave like the Nazis and the Italian fascists.
Here's what I find really strange.
got a lot of seats in Parliament, right?
They have right now they garner about something between 7 and 15% of the vote, depending on the area. So they're more like a minority party. But the thing is that, again, they are just waiting. I mean, no matter the fact that some of their people are in jail for crimes like murder and violence and things like that, it's the same situation as what the Nazi Party went through. They jailed Hitler for some time. But in the meantime, that's allowing them to be in the background and say, look, nobody else can lead the government. Nobody else can get you out of this mess. Come to us, come home, So
it's the fucking immigrants, because the poor people got to blame somebody.
That's right. That's right. And when people are desperate and they don't see any other options, and even basically the almost communists have failed them, I mean, you're looking at the Nazis are next in line.
Well, here's what I find really strange that's going on in Greece right now with the fact that the far left party is in power.
Yeah.
And you guys all know that I think labor unions in the United States are very useful and very helpful. But
to secure democratic votes?
Yes.
No, I think that they play a useful role in the U.S. But in Greece, labor unions are much more powerful. And what's even more important than this, written into law are many regulations that make it very difficult to fire workers in Greece, which means that people don't want to hire workers in Greece. So it's a very basic mess up
their pension,
with how to run an economy. Like it's kind of like 101 for you're not supposed to do this, but they did it anyway. And so the result is businesses don't want to hire in Greece. This has been something that they've been dealing with for a while. And now you've got a far left party that's in control, and yet a lot of the reforms that are going to need to happen at some point long run are reforms that I don't think you'd expect from this very far left party.
That's right. I mean, their pension system and stuff was broken, there's no doubt. But at the same time, firing, there was an example of Syriza kind of made this big PR point where they rehired the janitorial staff.
Oh, I read about that.
Presidential, I don't know, presidential facility or parliament or somewhere like that, some government entity. And they presented them back with their gloves and everything. You can go back to work now, to kind of show their working class solidarity. And I mean, the thing is that those janitors are not responsible for.
Come on, you fucking bad socialists, Jesus.
But their people are not responsible. It's not like the janitors were responsible for the spending and the problems that went on. But at the same time, you do have to try to implement reforms in the system while at the same time not making people have enough food, water, and shelter. And that's become the problem, is that the previous government that was in there, the more conservative and center-left group, they became focused on reforms and ignored the fact that people were starving. And you can't reform. You can't teach a man to fish while he's hungry.
So all right. So I guess to sum this all up, we could say that Goldman Sachs was largely responsible for the probable rise of the Nazi Party in Greece.
And the Greece government really needs to tackle corruption and tax avoidance. They do have problems with that need real tackling.
That's the other thing about the Nazis too, is that when they get in, they won't mess around. They'll just break people's legs when they don't pay their taxes, and that's going to literally be their campaign appeal.
God, I could see them getting support for that too.
Is that we're going to go after the rich and we're going to go throw them in jail? You know, that will literally be their campaign approach.
That would be pretty bizarre for the Nazis to be like, we need our IRS to be like America's IRS.
Yeah, they'll go back like the SS. They'll just go in there and arrest people and throw them in camps. You know.
All right, well, that's Greece.
All right.
Oh, shit.